Disclaimer. This podcast includes content created using artificial intelligence tools. All information is for general purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, legal, or regulatory advice. Listeners should verify information independently and consult qualified professionals for personalized guidance. Welcome to the Luxembourg Fundcast. Before we continue, we'd like to mention that the Luxembourg Fundcast is created and produced by Bertrand Mario, a practicing regulatory lawyer admitted to the Luxembourg and Paris bars. The mission of this podcast is to bring clear, free, and reliable information sourced from official references that are carefully curated and continually updated and refined through high-standard, evolving prompt engineering on Luxembourg's financial regulation and investment funds to professionals and anyone interested in the Luxembourg Financial Center. Welcome, everyone. Today we're doing a deep dive that really peels back the layers of corporate power itself right here in Luxembourg. Let's forget the balance sheet just for a moment, because today we're really getting into the architecture of how companies, specifically the Luxembourg Société Anonyme, the SA, how they actually govern themselves. You know, in a world that's increasingly shaped by activist investors and, frankly, some pretty complex shareholder relationships, a really fundamental question comes up. How does a Luxembourg SA manage to balance that sort of foundational ideal of shareholder equality, you know, everyone having a say, with the strategic need to keep a firm hand on the tiller?
That's the core tension, isn't it?
Exactly. And the answer, as we're going to find out, isn't about just ignoring those ideals. No, not at all. It's actually found in a pretty sophisticated and maybe often underappreciated evolution within Luxembourg's corporate law. So we're going to explore the art, and I guess the science, of creating shares with unequal voting rights. And just so everyone's clear, all the information and analysis we're discussing today is current as of August 21st, 2025. Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is clear. We want to dissect the precise legal mechanisms, specifically within Luxembourg's law of 10 August 1915 concerning commercial companies, which, you know, we all tend to call the 1915 law. We want to look at how that law allows an SA to elegantly and legally move away from the traditional one share, one vote idea. So we'll cover the exact legal basis for these, powerful structures. We'll dive into the really meticulous practical documentation you need to actually make them happen. And maybe most importantly, we'll try to illuminate the huge strategic value these arrangements offer, especially for companies dealing with, really complex shareholder situations. Think about companies with significant state involvement, or maybe those going through tricky post-merger integrations. It's a fascinating mix, really. Legal precision meets strategic thinking.
It really is. And to really get the significance of these modern changes, it's helpful to have a bit of historical context. It's crucial, actually. You see, for many, many years, the 1915 law was built on a very clear principle. This idea of one share, one vote. Simple, straightforward.
The bedrock, right?
Exactly. Seen as the bedrock of fairness, ensuring democratic control within the company. But look, the world of business and finance, it's changed dramatically since 1915, or even since, say, the late 80s or early 2000s. So while that principle was deeply embedded, it wasn't ever truly absolute. It wasn't unbending dogma. What we've seen, especially with the modernization of the law, is the introduction of these technically demanding, yes, but also incredibly sophisticated exceptions. And these aren't just minor footnotes. They are absolutely critical. Critical for strategic governance, critical for ensuring long-term corporate stability in today's, let's face it, dynamic and often quite volatile markets. They allow for a flexibility that the old, rigid way just couldn't offer.
That's a great way to put it. Not throwing out the principle, but adapting it intelligently. And that brings us right to the heart of it, doesn't it? What many see as the core concept in Luxembourg corporate law, that elegant French phrase, une action, une voix, which for anyone not fluent translates literally to one share, one vote. Now, this isn't just a slogan. It's the fundamental basis, the bedrock of shareholder democracy inside a company. And it's spelled out very clearly in Article 451, Paragraph 4 of the Consolidated 1915 law. What it means, basically, is that by default, the standard setting, if you like, every single shareholder gets to participate in meetings and cast votes exactly equal to the number of shares they hold. Simple as that.
Simple in theory.
Right. It's designed to make sure voting power directly mirrors economic interest. And it lines up nicely with, broader good governance ideas, like the Luxembourg Stock Exchange's 10 Principles of Corporate Governance. They really pushed for equitable treatment of all shareholders, transparency, all that good stuff. It sounds so straightforward, doesn't it? Almost self-evidently fair.
And what's fascinating here is precisely that point. While one share, one vote is vital as a default, it's crucial protection for minority interests, stopping them from being steamrolled. its rigid application everywhere all the time, well, paradoxically, that can actually get in the way. It can be an impediment in the complex strategic world modern international companies operate in.
How so?
Well, imagine a big global company, maybe one that needs to make really fast, decisive strategic moves in a super competitive market. Or think about a company starting a massive capital-heavy project that will take decades. In those situations, if you strictly apply one share, one vote across every single shareholder, you might dilute control so much that it undermines the long-term vision. Or worse, it could expose the company to short-term pressures from, say, activist investors whose goals just don't align with the company's foundational strategy.
Ah, okay. The classic short-term versus long-term tension.
Exactly, it's that tension between the ideal of pure democracy and the practical reality needed for effective, stable governance in a globalized world. It's about recognizing that sometimes what looks ideal on paper needs a bit of flexibility in practice to keep the company healthy long-term.
And it was exactly that tension, that need for practical flexibility, that led us to the Law of 10, August 2016. That was a truly pivotal moment for corporate governance here in Luxembourg. This wasn't just, a minor update, not just shuffling some paragraphs around. No. So what does this all mean? Well, this reform was really a deeply strategic legislative move, a clear signal that Luxembourg intended to stay right at the forefront of international corporate locations. It was making a statement.
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it becomes crystal clear why this reform was so vital for Luxembourg. Vital to maintain and even enhance its status as a top-tier international corporate home. Look, the global corporate landscape, finance, investment, operations, it's evolved incredibly quickly. Our legal framework had to keep pace. It needed to be robust, yes, but also incredibly versatile, adaptable. It needed to cater to the really sophisticated needs of these global businesses. Think about the kinds of structures we see now.
Like what, specifically?
Well, you've got founder-led tech firms, right? The visionaries raise huge amounts of outside capital, but they need to keep control to protect their long-term, often disruptive plans. Then you have companies with major state investment, national strategic interests, critical infrastructure. These things matter and require some government oversight built in. And of course, companies navigating the complex fallout of a big merger, integrating two different shareholder groups while keeping a clear strategic direction, that's a huge challenge.
Right. So for these complex players, the old rigid rule could actually be a problem.
A significant impediment, potentially. It could stifle innovation, leave them vulnerable. The 2016 reform tackled this head-on. It brought in more flexibility, and crucially, it cemented the legal certainty for structures that intentionally deviate from that default one share, one vote. It was a clear message to the global market. The Luxembourg SA isn't a generic box. It's a sophisticated, business-focused tool designed for complex capital structures and long-term strategic planning. It let Luxembourg offer solutions that really met the needs of global business.
That flexibility you mentioned, it really did change things. The 2016 update didn't just tweak things, it basically gave corporate architects a whole new set of tools, powerful ones. It set down two main ways to create these different voting rights, turning the SA from that sort of default model into something highly customizable. Let's dive into these technical bits, because this is where the precision of Luxembourg law really stands out. It allows for some very clever structuring. Okay, first up, the main mechanism shares with unequal nominal value. In French, that's actions à valeur nominale inégale. This is arguably the most powerful tool, the most nuanced one, certainly. And what's great is that it's not some hidden trick. It's stated right there in Article 451, Paragraph 4 of the 1915 law. It's a core part of the law.
That's absolutely right. The beauty of this is its directness, its inherent proportionality. The law now explicitly says where shares have unequal nominal value, each share gives votes proportional to the capital it represents. Simple as that. And the share with the lowest nominal value becomes the benchmark. That one counts as one vote.
Can you give us an example? Make it concrete.
Sure. Let's say a company amends its articles to create two share classes. Call them Class A shares, nominal value €1 each. And alongside them, Class B shares, maybe with a nominal value of €10 each. In that structure, perfectly legally, each Class B share carries 10 times the voting power of a Class A share. 10 votes versus 1 vote.
Wow, okay. That's a significant difference.
Exactly. This isn't a minor tweak. This is the core legal engine for creating strong dual-class or even multi-class voting systems. It lets companies precisely calibrate the power balance among their shareholders, who are often quite diverse. It ensures strategic control can stay where it's needed for the company's long-term vision and stability. It's incredibly precise, very fine-tuned control as possible.
Okay, that's the primary one. Then there's the secondary mechanism, non-voting shares. These are covered by Article 439 of the 1915 law. They serve a different, but equally strategic purpose, often for different kinds of investors, right?
Right. And this raises an important question, one people often ask.
Oh.
Why would any investor take shares with no vote?
Yeah, seems counterintuitive.
Well, non-voting shares, as the name suggests, don't get a vote at general meetings. But, and this is a crucial detail, they do get voting rights in very specific, limited situations. Mostly, it's when their own rights as a class are being directly changed or negatively affected. It's a protection mechanism for them.
So there's a trade-off.
Exactly, a fundamental trade-off. In return for giving up control over the company's general direction, these shares usually get preferential economic rights. Yeah. This could be a guaranteed dividend, maybe a higher dividend than voting shares get, or even priority if the company is liquidated, they get paid out first.
Okay, so it attracts a different type of investor.
Precisely. It attracts purely financial investors, those who care more about a steady yield or a clear economic return rather than direct influence or control. This allows companies to raise capital, sometimes significant amounts, without diluting the voting control of their core strategic shareholders, founders, long-term investors, the state, whoever it might be. It's a sophisticated way to segment your capital structure. You tailor it to the type of investor you need and the objectives you have, whether that's cash for growth or maintaining family control.
So we've got the legal foundations, the specific mechanisms, unequal value, and non-voting shares. But actually implementing these isn't just about knowing the law. It's an exercise in, well, absolute legal precision, like building a high-performance engine, piece by piece. And in this detailed work, the corporate secretarial function, often working quietly behind the scenes, becomes absolutely central.
They're the guardians of this architecture of control, aren't they?
They really are. Guardians ensuring it's not just strategically smart, but legally solid, robust. Right. And the cornerstone document, the absolute blueprint, that has to be the Articles of Association, the statutes, every single detail, every nuance of the share structure. It all has to be meticulously put into this constitutional text. It's the company's supreme law, essentially.
What's fascinating here is the almost surgical precision needed when drafting these articles. A senior governance professional has to oversee the exact wording of several key clauses. Because any vagueness, that's trouble later on.
Okay, what are these key clauses?
First, the share capital clause. It needs to clearly state the total authorized and issued capital. But crucially, also how it's divided into distinct, clearly named classes. Class A, ordinary, Class B, voting, whatever they are. No ambiguity allowed. Second, and this is really the heart of it, the rights of shares clause. This demands absolute clarity. Defines the specific rights, privileges, limitations of each share class, exact nominal value, their voting rights or the explicit lack of voting rights, and any special economic rights like dividends or liquidation preferences.
Yeah.
Let me stress this. Ambiguity here isn't a small mistake. It is, quite literally, a future lawsuit in waiting. Disputes love ambiguity.
Got it. Crystal clear definitions. What else?
Third, especially for those high vote shares, it's common and smart to include a transferability clause. These usually restrict how those shares can be sold or transferred, maybe a right of first refusal for existing shareholders, or requiring board approval for any transfer.
Why do that?
The goal is to keep strategic control within a known, trusted group, to prevent unexpected shifts in power that could wreck the company's long-term strategy. And critically, changing any of this, creating a new structure, modifying an old one, it requires a formal resolution, passed at an extraordinary general meeting, an EGM of shareholders, and crucially, held in the presence of a Luxembourg notary.
The notary's role is important then.
Vital. They aren't just watching. They actively verify the legality of the whole process, from calling the meeting to the final vote. Their presence guarantees the integrity and legal strength of the changes. It adds a massive layer of certainty.
So the articles are the blueprint. But if they're the plan, then the shareholder register, the register des actionnaires, that's the living day-to-day record of who actually holds the power, right? Keeping that meticulously isn't just paperwork. It's a core duty, like a bank keeping perfect account records.
Absolutely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the register's role is huge. It must be kept perfectly up to date at the company's registered office. Why? Because it's the ultimate legal proof of who owns which shares. It's the definitive list used to figure out who gets invited to meetings and, crucially, who gets to vote.
And with multiple share classes, that must get complicated.
Flawless organization is required. It's not enough just to list shareholders. The register has to clearly, meticulously show the different classes of shares each person holds. Think of it like a perfectly organized library catalog, not just the book title, but the specific edition, the binding type, everything relevant. This detail is essential for an accurate, indisputable count of voting rights at any meeting. It prevents disputes and upholds the whole structure. Any mistake here could lead to serious legal fights.
And like any solid legal process, there's a clear path, isn't there? A step-by-step procedure you have to follow for implementation. Not much left to chance.
Exactly. The process is very well defined. It's designed for legal certainty every step of the way. First step, the board proposal. It all starts formally with the board of directors. They had to pass a resolution proposing the new share structure to the shareholders. It's documented, official. They explain why and what they want to change. Second, convening the EGM. The board then formally calls an extraordinary general meeting. The notice sent out for this meeting is critical. It must include the full, exact text of the proposed changes to the articles. Complete transparency so shareholders know precisely what they're voting on.
Makes sense. Then the meeting itself.
Third, holding the EGM. Has to happen with a Luxembourg notary present. And to pass the resolution, specific thresholds from Article 453 of the 1915 law must be met. Typically, that means a quorum, at least 50% of the share capital present or represented. And then approval requires at least a 2/3 majority of the votes actually cast. These are high bars, protecting shareholders.
Okay, so the vote passes. What next?
Fourth, notarial deed and filing. The notary then draws up a formal deed. This officially records the amendment to the articles. Then the notary files this deed with the Luxembourg Business Registers, the LBR. That's the Central Record Office. And finally, the fifth step, opposability to third parties. This is key for it to be effective publicly. The new share structure, with all its rights and limits, becomes legally binding on everyone outside the company, banks, partners, everyone from the moment it's published in the official gazette, the Recueil électronique des sociétés et associations, or RISA.
Right.
Think of it like the company officially announcing to the world, this is how our shares work now. That publication makes it legally real for everybody. It's the final seal.
It's clear that while all that technical and legal precision is absolutely vital, creating unequal voting rights, it's rarely just technical, is it? It's really the legal version of a carefully negotiated deal, a delicate balancing act between different interests, often competing ones. It really is a kind of diplomatic dance.
You've hit upon such a crucial point there. Think about a complex listed company, maybe one with the state as a major shareholder, or one that's grown through big acquisitions. That kind of company will have an incredibly diverse shareholder base, and each group comes to the table with different goals, sometimes clashing ones.
Like who?
Well, the state shareholder, for instance. They usually care about long-term strategy, national benefit, jobs, stability. Their focus often isn't just profit. Then you have institutional investors. They want good governance, sure, but they're mainly driven by financial returns. They want transparency, accountability, and then maybe founding families or legacy shareholders. They often want to keep control over the company's core direction, its identity, its culture, even after raising lots of outside money.
All pulling in slightly different directions sometimes.
Potentially, yes. And the dual-class share structure. It's basically the main legal tool you have to try and reconcile these different interests. It provides a flexible framework. You can give high vote shares to the state or founders, guaranteeing strategic continuity, protecting a long-term vision, while at the same time, you offer low vote or non-voting shares to the public markets or financial investors. And you make those attractive with better economic rights, higher dividends, maybe liquidation preference to compensate for the lack of voting power.
So the governance professional's role here is more than just drafting legal text.
Oh, much more. They become a key strategic advisor during the negotiations. Their job is to design a solution that's legally watertight, yes, but also politically and commercially acceptable to all the main players. What's fascinating here is this isn't a back-office admin task. It's a high-value role sitting right at the crossroads of law, finance, and corporate diplomacy. It needs deep legal knowledge, sure, but also serious negotiation skills, stakeholder management, finding that consensus that serves the company best in the long run.
And naturally, this kind of bespoke legal work, this level of detailed structuring, it doesn't come cheap. Let's talk about the costs involved. There are the tangible fees. Notary fees for the EGM, LBR, filing fees, publication fees, and of course the fees for the top-tier legal advisors doing all that intricate drafting.
Yes. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, while those direct fees exist and can be significant, often the biggest costs are the advisory fees. Fees paid to elite legal and financial experts. These aren't just any advisors. They're specialists, top of their field, experts in structuring complex entities that last, that stand up to market scrutiny.
So it's more than just an expense.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to see these costs as a strategic investment. You could even call it an insurance premium paid to secure long-term stability and strategic freedom. Imagine trying to save money here using a less meticulous approach. The risks are huge. Shareholder lawsuits, challenges to the voting structure, maybe vulnerability to a hostile takeover that kills the long-term plan.
The cost of fixing that would be far higher.
It's exactly. Far higher than the initial advisory fees. These experts are vital for navigating those complex negotiations, ensuring the structure is legally robust and resilient to market pressures and activists. Without that expert investment, the risks of a flawed structure could cause irreparable damage. It's really an investment in control and the company's future.
Okay, so we've looked at the legal framework, the specific tools, the paperwork, the negotiation, all the intricate parts needed to build these structures. Now let's look ahead a bit. Strategically, practically, what kind of timeline are we talking about to put something like this in place? And what are the real unique selling points, the big advantages of strengthening a company's governance this way?
Okay, let's unpack this. Timeline first. From those initial board talks and drafting meetings, right through to the final publication in RISA. The typical time frame to implement a new multi-class share structure, usually somewhere between 4 to 8 weeks.
That seems about right, generally. Yeah, but the exact time can definitely vary. It really depends on how complex the shareholder approvals are, especially if you have many different classes needing to agree. And, crucially, those mandatory notice periods for calling the EGMs, you can't cut corners there. It needs precision, but also patience. You just can't rush the legal steps.
True. And what's fascinating here is the strategic payoff. The advantages of a well-designed structure with unequal voting rights, they are really significant, often quite powerful benefits for the company long-term. First, you get defense and stability, a really strong shield against short-term activism and, importantly, hostile takeovers. This insulation protects the board, protects management from pressure to chase short-term profits if that hurts long-term value or innovation.
Which industries find this particularly valuable?
Think about capital-intensive sectors, long investment horizons. The satellite industry is a classic example. Investments take decades, need steady strategic direction without constant shareholder interference. For them, this kind of governance stability isn't a nice-to-have, it's a strategic necessity. It lets management focus on huge, long projects without fear of being derailed by short-term thinking. Second big advantage. Post-merger integration. After a big, transformative acquisition, these structures can be incredibly helpful.
How so?
They allow the acquiring company to bring the target shareholders into the new, bigger company, while making sure the acquirer's own key strategic shareholders, state, founders, long-term investors, keep ultimate control over the new entity's direction. This de-risks the integration, ensures a clear command structure, consistent strategy, helps avoid the culture clashes or strategic confusion that often plague big mergers. It provides a stable base to build from.
That makes a strong case for what you might call justified control. But here's where it gets really interesting, because the whole conversation around corporate control is changing, isn't it? The 1915 law clearly gives the ability to create these control structures. But today's corporate governance world demands, well, a new level of justification for them. It's not enough just to have the legal right anymore.
This raises an important question. How does a modern company handle this scrutiny? You see, the EU's Shareholder Rights Directive 2, SRD2, which came into Luxembourg law on August 1st, 2019, that really pushed for much greater transparency and accountability. It requires better shareholder identification, encourages deeper engagement between companies and investors.
And investors are paying more attention.
Absolutely. Institutional investors, powerful proxy advisors, they're increasingly skeptical of dual-class structures. They often see them as a governance risk, a way management could become entrenched, insulated from accountability, ignoring genuine shareholder views. They worry it prioritizes a few insiders over everyone else.
So companies can't just implement these quietly now.
Not really. A modern SA choosing this path has to be ready to proactively, transparently justify the structure to the market. They need a compelling strategic story, a clear explanation of how this structure serves the company's long-term interests, protects its mission or assets, and, crucially, how it does this without unfairly harming the economic rights of minority shareholders.
So communication becomes key.
Sophisticated investor relations and communication are essential. That function, closely linked to senior governance, is becoming more critical than ever. The future for companies using these structures is definitely one of justified control. The legal right must be constantly paired with transparency and a convincing narrative to keep market confidence and ensure long-term stability. You have to be ready to defend your structure legally, ethically, and strategically to a demanding audience.
Right. So after diving deep into all these complexities, the legal nuts and bolts, the strategic angles, what does this all mean for you, our listener? Let's try and boil it down. Recap the 3 key takeaways from today's exploration.
Okay, 3 core points to take away from our discussion today. First, that one share, one vote rule in Luxembourg. It's the default, yes, it's deeply rooted, but it is not absolute. The 1915 law, especially post-2016, offers clear, powerful, legally sound exceptions. There's flexibility there for strategic corporate design. Second, the most effective, most precise tool for creating different voting powers is making share classes with unequal nominal values. This allows fine-tuned calibration of control in economics, but it must be embedded with absolute precision in the company's articles. No room for error there. And third, implementing this kind of structure, it's really the ultimate exercise in corporate diplomacy. It needs that delicate balance. Legal exactness combined with negotiated compromise, all aimed at aligning different stakeholder interests for the long haul. It's about building consensus, trust, and then locking it down legally.
That's an excellent summary. It really captures the essence. And perhaps a final thought for you to mull over. Given these rising demands for transparency, for shareholder engagement, driven by things like SRD2, how will companies with these sophisticated control structures continue to navigate and adapt? How will they maintain that justified control here in the dynamic Luxembourg Financial Center? It's a fascinating ongoing story, isn't it? Legal ingenuity meeting evolving market expectations. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on it. This podcast is a collaborative and free resource that improves continually, so your comments or requests for new topics are highly welcome, especially on YouTube. We want to be a helpful strength for everyone working in the Luxembourg Financial Center at all levels. We are often asked how you can help us. Well, a great way to help is by subscribing to our shows on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify, as well as on Apple Podcasts, where a 5-star rating would really help us. You can also like our videos and subscribe to our Rigore Media YouTube channel. All relevant links will be available in the show notes. For our French-speaking listeners, you can also find our sister podcast in French. It was the Luxembourg Fundcast for you today. Disclaimer. This podcast includes content created using artificial intelligence tools. All information is for general purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, legal, or regulatory advice. Listeners should verify information independently and consult qualified professionals for personalized guidance.